Okay, so the Shabbos Project or the Shabbat Project. This is a topic which, of course, um, there's no question that the intentions behind this project are very recommendable, and indeed, um, Rabbi Warren Goldstein and all the other people involved in the creation of this project should very much be praised for their intentions. However, after seeing what happened last year and seeing what's going to happen this year, there are a few exceedingly important points that have to be made. There's no question that any good project will have a few things that need some improvement, but some of these things in this case are a little bit, I think, too far as to be something that one can overlook, or something that shouldn't have been fixed, or really should have been fixed. I should note that, of course, my perspective is, of course, biased towards where I am, Melbourne, the Melbourne Shabbat Project. But as far as I can tell from the what I can see online from other places, is that most of these points hold true for for many different areas in the world, and also the points hold true for the things which come from the central organizers, like the official materials and so on. So the first point is that when we say keeping it together, the number one question that anyone should ask is on whose terms. Well, obviously, it's going to be on Orthodoxy's terms, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's really quite clear that it means halachically observing Shabbat. But once you say Orthodox, and that is as acceptable within Orthodox, there are an exceedingly large amount of views which are accepted by all of Orthodoxy as valid. And yet one gets the picture that the Shabbat Project doesn't really accept that. And there are two different parts I'm going to make to this, two different critiques. And of course I do this with a bit of caution, because of course when you're speaking against something which is something which does really truly unify, then it has to be done in a cautious fashion. But the question is unification on which, at what cost? So I want to start with a few halachic points. So I'm looking at this year, they made this Shabbat map, and they make a number of halachic things over here. Now, I understand that you can't give a whole halachic explanation. You can't give long-winded things because it's a product. Nonetheless, there should at least be a footnote somewhere, some sort of note that there should be that there are differences. And I'll go through and I'll explain what I mean by giving examples. Okay. For example, on the pre-Shabbat checklist, it says about in the shopping list, it says mouthwash, right? Liquid soap, liquid sunscreen, and things like this. So, mouthwash. Why? Because as it was more clear last year, but it's quite clear also this year as well, because of the opinion to not brush teeth on Shabbat. Now, this is rather surprising that on a issue which is actually, I think I'm pretty sure the vast majority of poskim are actually much more lenient than they are strict, and it's not as Ashkenazi Sephardi thing. This is modern Orthodox. J.B. Soloveitchik allowed it. Plenty of people allowed it, and there's zero mention. Especially if you're talking about people who are not so observant. Why is there a jump to literally the most stringent opinion that there is? Which we'll get to in a moment. Liquid soap and liquid sunscreen. Why? They give an explanation. On Shabbat, we don't use thick substances that are smeared on. Well, according to whom? Memoreach is a heavily debated issue. They explicitly say you cannot use a bar soap, even though Rav Ovadia Yosef, none less than the chief uh, Sephardi rabbi of Israel, probably was the most famous Sephardi rabbi of the past century, says explicitly you can use a bar of soap. And there are plenty of views which say that you're allowed to put on creams onto the face or on the body if it's not for refuah, and they don't consider that to be memoreah, the problem of smearing in order to smooth out something else. The fact is that this is not universal at all. Then move on. Food preparation. Just a few more examples. Food preparation. It says, for example, the food on the tray on the hot plate must have no liquid. Again, machloket. According to Sephardim, it's no problem, right? And then you have the urn. The urn has a picture with two cups, implying kli shalishi. Whereas saying one cup, put the water first, and then put the other things. Again, kli shalishi is very much a chumrah, by accepted by most Jews to be a chumrah, and kli sheni is more than enough. And it goes on and on and on. There are just a whole lot of examples of this type of thing. Now, again, I understand that there has to be some level of simplification for people who are not religious. The problem is like this. And the second point is the second criticism. I'm going to make this point even stronger. The point is that this are exceedingly Haredi standards, or Orthodox, very right-wing Orthodox standards, whereas the vast majority of people, as far as I can tell, are really, even those who are religious who are taking part of it, would identify more with modern Orthodoxy or with traditional Judaism, and not with this with ultra Orthodoxy. It seems like it's not taking into account the majority of people. It's rather forcing a very specific view. The other point is that even though you can't put in all the views, they should explicitly be stated that there are differences in these matters, and that the local rabbi who is organizing whatever that local Shabbos project is should be the authority on these matters. It shouldn't be given to a centralized authority in South Africa, especially one that is not aware of the makeup of communities all over the world. I think everyone can agree with this, even if you believe in that theoretically there's one halacha for everyone and the one halacha should be universal and so on. The fact of the matter is that at the moment it is not like that, and there has to be a certain level of tolerance. In fact, other people's religious observance is not really anyone else's business, but they're on their own. Now, if you intend that the Shabbat Project should be that they should be halakhic observed, that is fine, and perhaps it very much should be that way. But to force one specific halachic view is the exact opposite of unity, of a Shabbat of Achdut. It's more like a Shabbat of unity with us, not unity with you. In other words, the organizer saying, you will be united with us, but we're not united with you. Because you can have unity with people following different things. The next point is, if you look at all the Divrei Torah, all the rabbis, there is the 2 points have to be made. Firstly, they tend to be Orthodox or ultra Orthodox, or if you have modern Orthodox, very much on the right wing of modern Orthodox. And there is, as far as I can tell, out of the rabbis at least, I think there's one person who was a rabbi who wasn't a rabbi that I saw, looks like a Sephardi, but there was not a single Sephardi rabbi. Not even, and I checked, I went through the Sephardi book of the guide where they have all the prayers and everything else, which they made like 3 different nusachot, which is very nice, but there's not a single Devar Torah from Sephardi, not one. I remember last year, so a friend of mine was complaining about this, and so he was told, also, why did Sephardim make their own Shabbat Project? You're criticizing it, it's like we're doing it. So what type of unity is that? Or we're doing it, and therefore, if you want it, you make your own Shabbat Project. That's not unity. That's not unity at all. The lack of consideration is really shocking. It's really shocking. There's really no excuse. If you are speaking about unity, There's no reason why I should have to be making a video to correct you. This should be obvious. And if it isn't, then you're doing it wrong. There's no other way to put it. It's just baffling. It's just really, really baffling. And then let's move on to another issue. It's not as bad as last year, that's the truth. But last year, for example, there was a sign here in Melbourne, as far as I can tell. It was also in other cities as well, where on the same sign it says that on Friday or whatever it was, this shiur for men and challah baking for women. Now, challah baking is all nice and good and fine, but at the same time, the shiur is for men, right? There's no, like, at least last year, there was no, that wasn't, it was just like women were challah baking and men were shiur, and that was it. Nowadays, I mean this year, sorry, I noticed that there are some shiurim for women before Shabbat, but most of the programs that I can take, at least in Melbourne and a few other places that I checked, are cooking or socializing, whereas men, you have social things and you have learning, and very, they don't challah bake or they don't cook or anything else. There is a certain level of misogyny in this. Now, I'm only saying this because I wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't for the other problems. Because the reason why I would say there's a level of misogyny is because we're talking about, since it was very, very clear from the halachic aspects, from the aspects of which rabbis they have that have their statements there and so on, it seems very, very clear that this is coming from a specific type of community where that's the norm and it's being imposed. It's, even though local areas have a lot of independence in these matters, it seems to be that there is something here about this that is not so palatable. I mean, I think it is improvement from last year. It's sure an improvement on this particular matter, but nonetheless, the problem is still there. I think that basically sums up the main criticisms. There are a few more, and I could go on for longer. But my point isn't to criticize. My point is like just solely to criticize. It's to point out that there really should be a greater consideration in these matters, especially if there's an intention to unify. So my recommendations, at least for next year, would very much be that when it comes to halachic matters, to make it very clear that it is subject to the rabbi of the place, to not state things as absolute facts when they're not, to increase diversity in the people who have written Divrei Torah, and that programming should, to some extent, be equalized between men and women. These are my recommendations. One, of course, is free to take these recommendations or not. But the thing is that it's already the second year, and things that should have been improved have been improved. And my view is that if these things aren't fixed, that in the future all such programs should really be boycotted, because there's no other choice if they're not going to improve on these very obvious issues. But anyway, so here's hoping for a peaceful Shabbat and a good Shabbat, and hopefully we will genuinely have a good level of achdut, of Jewish unity, and may it be a merit for all of us, Klal Israel.